Coming up on today's show, we're going to do some Arthur Smith replacements if he is fired at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to fire him mid-season, but I asked on yesterday's show if I should do some replacements, and you guys said yes. So we're going to run through my top 10 replacement options for the Atlanta Falcons if they move on from Arthur Smith. And it's a bit ironic that I'm doing this video on Today of all days where I lost my voice, so I can't even call for another man's job and say it with my own chest. But let's jump into 5 replacement options on the offensive side, starting with Ben Johnson, the hottest name of all coordinators right now. Every single year, there is that young, hotshot, offensive-minded, mid to late 30s, next Sean McVay guy that everyone wants. This year, it's Ben Johnson. So a little bit of a background on Ben Johnson. He's 37 years old, which is kind of interesting because if you recall, when Atlanta hired Arthur Smith, he was, 38 years old? So not very far off from where Art was when he took the job. And he's currently in his second year as the Lions offensive coordinator after being on their staff for a few years prior. Under Johnson, the Lions, by the way, have averaged 26.6 points per game. This is the Detroit Lions we're talking about, by the way. Just kind of keep that in mind. That is the 6th most since he took over as the OC in 2022, only behind juggernauts like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Bills and whatnot, although Buffalo is not looking like a juggernaut at the moment. This is this year's up-and-coming hotshot, like I said. And Jared Goff has had a complete resurgence with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator. I mean, look at his numbers before Ben Johnson compared to with Ben Johnson. Completion percentage, up. Yards per game, up. Rating, up. Interception touchdown ratio, a touchdown to interception ratio, improved. He has unequivocally improved in every single aspect of the game with Ben Johnson as his coordinator. And when teams are looking to make a hire from a coordinator jump to a head coaching jump, they want to see on the field improvement at the most important positions like the quarterback. However, I think just going into this process as let's hire the young and upcoming offensive coordinator does not always end well. We've seen this movie end before. Nathaniel Hackett was kind of that guy going to Denver. Not as much buzz, but he was the young, cool, players love him, offensive guru. Couldn't control a locker room, fell flat on his face. Arthur Smith is not very far off from what Ben Johnson is doing right now when he was with Tennessee 3-4 seasons ago, right? He was about the same age. He was the young and up-and-coming offensive-minded guy, and look where we are right now. So all I want to say is have a little bit of caution before just blindly getting in bed with, oh, you're 37 and you're an offensive coordinator, sign me up. Second Arthur Smith replacement option, Kellen Moore. He is Ben Johnson 3 years later, right? He's actually, I think, younger than Ben Johnson, but he is basically the Ben Johnson from the 2021 head coaching cycle. Now, he is currently in his first season as the Chargers offensive coordinator after being the OC in Dallas for 4 years, where ultimately he was let go because the Cowboys just could not put together any wins in the postseason outside of a Bucs win and then an embarrassment in San Francisco. But I digress. His offenses, though, have been very successful. Kellen Moore, as the OC in Dallas and in LA, has averaged 27.5 points per game. But I personally am not interested in Kellen Moore. I was not interested in Kellen Moore when he was the Cowboys offensive coordinator. I'm not interested in him coming out as the Chargers offensive coordinator. Why? Because there is more to being a head coach than being a good OC, right? Being a head coach means running all 3 areas of football: offense, defense, and special teams. And if you're really bad at one of those 3 areas, well, you can kind of cover that up by making a good coordinator hire, but it's not easy to make good coordinator hires, right? We can always say, oh, well, if you hire an offensive guy, just hire a great DC. What DC factory are you going to where just great DCs grow on trees? No, you build your staff by networking. People you have worked with, people that want to come work with you, right? There is a human side to being a head coach and leading a franchise. And I don't think Kellen Moore is cut out to be that type of leader. But let me know, should the Falcons go offensive-minded? They went offensive-minded with Arthur Smith after firing Dan Quinn. And you can see that just blindly hiring an offensive coordinator does not always work like people think it does. So let me know, yes or no. Third Arthur Smith replacement, Eric Bieniemy. Ooh, Bieniemy is probably the most popular OC name right now after Ben Johnson. So if you're not familiar with Eric Bieniemy, he's got some skeletons in his closet. You can go look up his Wikipedia if you want. But in his first year currently as the Commanders OC, after being the OC in Kansas City for 5 seasons, since 2018, Bieniemy's offenses have averaged 29.1 points per game, including 21.7 in Washington. Now, I will add that it helps when Andy Reid's the play caller, which he was in Kansas City, and Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, and Tyreek Hill is your wide receiver for 4 out of those 5 years. So I don't think it's fair to just attribute all the success in Kansas City to Eric Bieniemy, but I also think it's a little bit unfair to act like Eric Bieniemy had no role in Kansas City's prolific offense, the number one scoring offense over the last half decade at this point. However, I am passing on Eric Bieniemy. To me, this screams Josh McDaniels 2.0, right? Really good offensive-minded guy, but doesn't really play well with others. There have been lots of stories of players not working well with Eric Bieniemy, people not liking working with Eric Bieniemy. There are a lot of skeletons in Eric Bieniemy's closet, and ultimately, Eric Bieniemy has interviewed for a head coaching position every single offseason. Every single offseason, people pass on him. Don't you think there's a bit of a reason why? Like, a head coaching position is not one that owners and GMs want to mess around with. If they truly believe Eric Bieniemy would be a great head coach, someone would have hired him at this point. Not everyone is supposed to be a head coach. There are lots of examples of great coordinators out there. Not all of them are going to be great head coaches. Some people are just born to be OCs or DCs. Not everyone's going to be a great head coach. I think Bieniemy is fine in his current role. Now, before we get to the rest of my replacement options, really quickly, Falcons Today is sponsored by Game Time. Now, you should not have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. So let's say you want to go see an upcoming Falcons game, you want to see a Hawks game, you want to go see a game over in Athens. Game Time is the place to visit first. Now, what I love about Game Time is the ability to do a last-minute, spur-of-the-moment boys trip to go catch a game, right? There's nothing better than putting together a plan at the bar late Friday or Saturday night and then executing it. But there's nothing worse than a big roadblock in that plan, and that is ticket prices. But Game Time, they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code FalconsChat for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem that code FalconsChat for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's run through my 4th and 5th Arthur Smith replacement options, starting with Frank Smith. That's the OC for the Miami Dolphins right now. They're having a great season in South Beach, of course, offensively. However, I will add Mike McDaniel is calling the shots down there, so take that information and do with it what you will. And then Shane Waldron. I mean, maybe completely revitalizing and saving Geno Smith's career from being just a lifelong backup to having a really good Seahawks offense. So those are 2 names to keep an eye on. I'm not super high on them, but I will add that, sorry for the voice and everything. I will add that when fans look for head coaching replacements, most of the time, 90% of their opinion of these coordinators is formed based on, well, what did their offense average? What did their defense average? That's not how these interviews go. Like, sure, you want to have a good offense, right? You want to have a good defense. But you're hiring a person. You're hiring someone you have to work with every single day as a general manager, as an owner. So there is a human element that you just can't really find by looking at ESPN's offensive stats for the Seahawks and for the Dolphins. So before you rush to conclusions, just bear in mind, you are also hiring a leader for 53 players in your locker room, and some are better leaders than others. Now let's move on to some other replacement options, starting with Jim Harbaugh, Michigan football head coach. Could he make his way back to the NFL through ATL? Well, he's currently suspended by the Big Ten for the whole sign-stealing allegations and whatnot for the remainder of the regular season, although that could change. But That's for a Michigan football video over at James Yoder's house. However, he did interview for the Broncos head coaching job last offseason. In the offseason before that, the Vikings head coaching job. So 2 straight off seasons where Jim Harbaugh has shown and expressed interest clearly in returning to the NFL. There's also been a lot of rumors and speculation that Jim Harbaugh ultimately wants to go back to the NFL. That's where his love is. That's where his passion is. He's having success right now in Michigan, so he's not dying to jump off the Michigan bandwagon, especially if it's not for the right opportunity in the NFL. Personally, if I was Arthur Blank, I would write Harbaugh a blank check. I think Jim Harbaugh is the best head coaching candidate for this entire pool. What he did in San Francisco, taking a defunct 49ers team to the NFC Championship game in year 1, the Super Bowl in year 2, back to the NFC Championship game, only to be run out of San Francisco and go back to Michigan. I think Harbaugh is a fantastic NFL head coach, and if I were the Falcons, I would do whatever it took to get him. Now, Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL has mostly been rumored to be to places where he has stops in history and connection, right? The Bears, he played for the Bears. The Colts, he played for the Colts, right? But what if he is just tired of playing college football politics and he wants out of Ann Arbor? And the places where he has stops in, like Indianapolis, doesn't have a vacancy. The Bears, if that were to fall through for whatever reason, like Kevin Warren is the president of the Chicago Bears. You might not know that name. You might recognize that name. Kevin Warren was the former Big Ten president, the commissioner. Him and Harbaugh did not see eye to eye on a lot of things. So maybe Kevin Warren does not want to hire Jim Harbaugh. So if Harbaugh is dying to get back to the NFL and all of his top destinations are not open for business, and Arthur Blank and Home Depot come around with a blank check, all of a sudden the Falcons could look pretty appetizing in my eyes. But let me know, would you want Jim Harbaugh? H for hire, P for pass. Give me your opinion down below in the comment section if you want to see Jim Harbaugh down in ATL. Moving on to some other replacement options. If you want to go defensive side of the ball, Lou Anarumo from the Cincinnati Bengals is a very good option to look at. We can look at him a little bit closer as well. Raheem Morris is another option, but there are a lot of good DCs out there. Jim Schwartz is a name to keep an eye on. He has the Cleveland Browns defense looking like the best defense in the NFL right now. And then Ejiro Evero. He was with the Broncos last year when they were a complete dumpster fire. He went over to Carolina. He is one of those quality leaders of men, right? Where you don't know it by the stats and the play on the field, but by word of mouth and what everyone says around Evero, he apparently is a very well-respected and well-liked coach. But if I had to pick one of those 4 guys right there, Jim Schwartz would probably be the best coordinator of the bunch, although you don't get second head coaching opportunities very often, especially as a defensive-minded guy. So with him kind of burning out, unfortunately, in Detroit, I don't think he's going to get another head coaching shot. However, Lou Anarumo with the Cincinnati Bengals, that is a different story. He's 57 years old. He's in his 5th year as the Bengals defensive coordinator. And since taking over, Cincinnati's defense has allowed 23.4 points per game. That's 15th in the NFL. And that's a defense that doesn't invest a whole lot of big free agency money, right? Go ask Jesse Bates about that. They let him walk. They added Trey Hendrickson, but there's a lot of homegrown talent in Cincinnati, and that gives a lot of credit to Lou. Now, this is not the sexy pick, but if the Falcons can't find a good coordinator and they want a stable head coach, this could be your best option. And I understand that might be a bit of a bummer, but at some point you have to make the best hire of what your available options are. And don't rule out Lou Anarumo as the best option if there is not a great head coaching pool this upcoming offseason. But who do you want to replace Arthur Smith? If you were calling the shots, who would you want to see as the next head coach for Atlanta? Let me know down in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to the video. That way you do not miss any more Falcons news and rumors.